From the top shelf of the Adventurers Night Club, we bring you Beverage et Toi. If your desk or coffee table is always occupied by the three most desirable beverages, one for energy, one for hydration, and one just for fun, then you're just the kind of three-drink fiend Buka made this coaster for.
Thanks, Buka.
It lusciously rotates so you can salaciously see which drink is on which coaster for easy access to the beverage you desire. Drop in to Second Wind's DFTBA store
And treat yourself.
It comes in a 4-pack so you can share one, because we know you've got a friend you want to share more than a coaster with. There we go. We are now live. Hey everybody, welcome to RPG Help Desk. I'm very excited because I have a guest today. And we get to talk about like gaming influences and stuff because you have designed and produced, and we played it on Hot Monday Energy, a game.
Yes.
And so we could talk about all of that, but please introduce yourselves to anybody.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Julia Minamata. I am a solo-ish dev of the Crimson Diamond, and which launched in August 2024. I self-published it as well, and solo-ish is what I call it because I did the programming and the design and the writing and the art and animation, and I designed the fonts and all that stuff. But I didn't do the music. Dan Pollicker did the music. I had, of course, helped testing it and porting it and all those things. So I definitely didn't do it by myself, but I just use that. I see solo-ish on my Blue Sky profile because it gives people an idea of like the roles that I had. But otherwise, no, tons of help. And I also stream. I stream on Crimson Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. I stream game development. So if you want to come watch me work on my next project, you can find me at _Maple Mystery. And I also play retro games. Yeah.
Nice. And for easy time, it should be tagged in Twitter. So if you just click on it in the title, that's what it's called. I couldn't remember what that's called.
It's called. Fantastic. We couldn't come up with that, either of us.
Yeah,
we have it.
I called it the subject line, which is what you do for emails in that space. It's like, God, but it has a name here. Okay, so that's awesome because we were playing it and it was really cool. So you did you were saying what all did you do for it? Because you said solo-ish, but like what is, that is, I am sure like 90%.
Yeah, I mean, of the actual creative work and the decision making, like I did all that. So yeah, the writing of the story, which I guess we'll talk about in a little bit. Art, animation, fonts. So there's two fonts. There's like a sans serif and serif font, and I call them Crimsonite, and those are the ones you can use. Because I'm the kind of person where I started to look at like font licensing and everything, and I'm the kind of weirdo that says I don't understand this, and I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just gonna make my own fonts. Won't that be easier? So I just did that. But the stuff that I didn't make specifically was the soundtrack, which is 40 minutes of music, is by Dan Pollicar. Also, the sound effects are like Roland MT32 sound bank sound effects. I did make some of the sound effects though, like that. There's like a ching, like opening doors and drawers and things. I did make those sound effects myself, so I did do some of that too. But like pretty much all the creative work except for the music and sound were done by me. So.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so I'm really curious about, because we want to talk about as a game designer that you are, and like the influences that you've had in the RPG space, thing you've done with it. So really, what got you into game design?
Yes, it kind of happened accidentally. Because I started as an illustrator first. I was a freelance illustrator for many years. That's what I have my degree in. I have a Bachelor of Applied Arts Illustration. So I'm an artist turned game developer. And there's a few of us around, but I think mostly there's the people who are programmers first, and then they kind of get into game design. But I started there, and I started wanting to just recreate pixel art of the kind that I liked, like the adventure game pixel art look. And from there, I just started to teach myself, slowly teaching myself an engine called Adventure Game Studio to do more stuff with these rooms that I was creating. And that was the way I started. I started learning on YouTube tutorials, this particular engine. and started to over many years. Like I think the first pixel art piece I posted on my illustration blog was like from 2009 or something, and then just puttering around with it until 2018, and then I had a chapter one demo that I showed to the public, and then from 2018 to 2024, I finished the game and released it.
That's awesome. What a thing. So like that being an adventure game, very much like dialogue driven. I actually do want to talk about like
Mhm.
you making dialogue and stuff, because I feel like with text only stuff, you very much have to focus on the words, um, versus like, oh, the performance that someone will give to it, where it's like, no, you have to make things distinct. And I feel like that's a really cool
Yes.
thing. We'll get that in a moment, even though I'm very excited to talk about it. Um, so what's your experiences with tabletop RPGs?
Yes. I actually didn't come into tabletop until much later down the line, but I've always been interested in it, just never had a group together. My of course my favorite like game genre is adventure games. My second favorite is RPGs. I kind of learned about, tabletop role-playing games through first getting acquainted with computer role-playing games. So learning about like systems and like armor and Thaco and all that stuff I learned from. Yes, I learned that from Wizardry. Wizardry 7, I think, is where I learned about that. And so I was always interested. And then when I got into tabletop, it was D&D, I think 3.5, and then
Hmm.
Pathfinder. And that's how I got acquainted with actually getting to play it. But my very first, like, kind of not, we talked about this just before we recorded, but like Heroes Quest. Was my
Yeah.
very first. I don't know if that even counts as a tabletop RPG because it's more like a board game. Like, what is the boundary between board game and TTRPG? Is it the fact that there's actually a board? Is it as easy as that?
I think chat also welcome to weigh in. I think it is the role play element. Like I think
Eh?
that, so like it's something like Red Dragon Inn, it's like it's not a role playing game, but if you really get into the character that you're
Right.
playing, like, oh, I'm the ogre, I'm the witch doctor, I am the mad scientist, like, in that I
Yep.
feel like then you can start to kind of, all right, maybe it's a little bit in this line. So I think decision making, maybe
Mhm.
that's part of it too. Decision making based on the character versus
Mhm.
the mechanics. I think
Interesting.
that starts to, and it is a fuzzy gray line for sure. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a hard, this is role playing, this isn't, here's the line.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
when the character influences the action versus, oh, well, this is the best card to play, or this would be the correct move to do. Because
Okay.
I think it's similar like that in like wargaming, where I played some Forbidden Psalm,
Mhm.
and we were doing a co-op, two armies versus like a automated uh NPC army,
Mhm.
and we were trying to do something, and like theoretically what I should have done is once I got the stuff, I just leave the other person behind and run. But like when they
Okay.
got pinched, I was like, no, we're
I
going out
see.
together, and like push my army back in to help save them. That was like theoretically dumb decision, but
Right.
that's what the characters would have done.
Okay. Okay, I see. I like that. I like that kind of distinction where it is character based. Because I was thinking initially, oh, maybe it's when you create your own characters, like you roll your own characters. But that's not the case in like a lot of like Ultima, for instance. You're not rolling your own characters. Those characters are you get those characters and they even have names and everything. So that's definitely not a distinction. But in Hero Quest, like you do have set characters and you're not creating
Hmm.
your own characters. But I will say, like, it doesn't seem like any decision I made in that game was based on the character per se, but more on like the stats that particular character had, right? Or the strengths of whatever. They were good at attacking, so you would attack with the barbarian or the warrior, or whatever he was called. I did see mention in the chat of those custom campaigns. And yeah, talking about game design and my first experience designing a game was Hero Quest. I actually have never talked about this before, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about it for like years and years and years, really, but I did make my own like little campaign because yeah, there is like a booklet of like missions you can do, and so me and my sister and my neighbors we play through all the missions, and then after that you could design your own, and I did design my own, and I was trying to think about what that campaign was, and it's so funny considering some of the stuff is like stuff I brought into Crimson Diamond where it was called Troubles at Tranquilia Manor. So it was like a house-based campaign, and then you had to find three colored gems. There's one red gem, one yellow gem, and one blue gem. And I set up the campaign and everything, and we actually did play through it, and that was really cool. That was my first time designing a game that other people played. And after that, I think we kind of fell off of doing Heroes Quest and everything, but I've always kind of wanted to make computer games, but when I was interested in it, first of all, there were no like game design like university or college programs when I was in college, and or so I didn't have an opportunity to like really full explore that academically. That all happened like after college for me. So when I graduated from college, I tried to become a freelance illustrator for many years, and then after that, I had all this free time, so I started to like find out about indie games because indie games were becoming a thing. This is like 2000s, early 2010s, and the tools were suddenly much more easy to use than they had been like way back when I was a kid. Like when you were a kid, you had to be a hardcore programmer to get
Mm-hmm.
any of that stuff to work, and I just wasn't, and I still am not. But yeah, by like the 2010s or so, we get something like Adventure Game Studio, like I mentioned, where not only is it much easier to use, but if you have questions about how to use it, you can ask other people online, right? So it was the perfect time for someone like me who didn't have that programming experience or games dev experience to really get interested and start doing it.
That's cool. I what was it about Heroes Quest that really hooked you?
The furniture, the furniture.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I loved the little like you get these little treasure chests, these doorways and tables and everything and the little like the little miniatures and everything. And still to this day, that's how like this whole thing started for me with the Crimson Diamond was making little rooms so you could furnish like the rooms with all these little cute little chairs and everything. And that even when I used to play Clue, I would not play Clue like you would play Clue. I would play it like it was a dollhouse. Like I would move the little characters around and sit them in the little chairs and the pictures and everything. That was for some reason. It was kind of like a dollhouse to me, and that's when I started making the game, and it started as these rooms. I was making a dollhouse, and I wanted to make my little character move through this little dollhouse that I was making, and that's just my fascination with setting. And we could talk about establishing setting and how I started with that, and from that, and kind of doing research about a setting and trying to figure out who would live here and why they would live here and when all that would be happening. That's how the story started happening. And I think that's the same can be true for a lot of tabletop role playing games where you get this setting, and then from there, the players are invited to imagine themselves and who they would be in that context. And I think that's really cool.
Ooh. Yeah, I think that right there is a huge part of it is like who you would be in that context.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we talked a little bit beforehand about world building,
Hmm.
um, and so I think that is such an important part. What tips do you use as a game designer? Which, as a RPG person, you could absolutely. There's so much overlap between like
Hmm.
video game design and tabletop design, and just like running a game, DMing and stuff. What do you put into your world building that should be hooking people? Like they're like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm building it specifically with these steps in mind.
For me, I'm not sure necessarily if the way that I did it was specifically to hook people. It was more like I wanted to create a setting that felt grounded in reality.
Okay.
And because I think with an adventure game especially, like it's basically you've got story, you've got character, and you've got setting and environment. And I felt it was so important to really nail it because not only will it I guess attract people to the game and the story if it's well grounded as a setting. But even designing, what's going to happen in the story and what's going to happen puzzle wise, I couldn't do that if I didn't know very well what era this was and what were the issues involved around this time and what technology they had around this time. Like it all comes from that research, and for me anyway, it all came from the setting of visuals, and that's how I started with it. Where I would create a room. The first room that I made it into the game was a kitchen. And you think of a kitchen, okay, you've got cupboards, you got a stove. Well, what does the stove look like? Well, when is this? That's going to make a
Mm-hmm.
big difference in terms of what kind of stove you're going to have in there. Is there going to be a refrigerator? Did they have that at the time? So that's how I did the research in terms of, well, what aesthetic do I like, but also practically speaking, yeah, what would be available in Northern Ontario in 1914. And from answering those questions, that's how I started to think about, well, yeah, there's this place and it's in 1914. Well, who lives here? Why do they live here? And who else lives here? And all those questions, you start with a bunch of questions that you start to slowly answer as the research is happening. And that is how the story actually like evolved over like a fairly long period of time. Taking into account the stuff that I was already interested in, like Canadian history and mineralogy, and kind of weaving that all into something that could conceivably could have happened historically, which is something that I find really compelling. And I think other people felt like, yeah, they really felt this was a real place, and that was really important to me.
So that's cool. What do you use specifically in your mind to like establish the era, the tech, the mood that you're going
Hmm.
for? Like you mentioned, like some about the like, oh, here's the stove that they would use. Like, what
Yes.
are the things that you're looking for that are like anchors for you?
Yeah. Other things besides the technology, but even like the art and architecture, the furniture design, textile design,
Back to
the kinds of
furniture.
patterns. Yeah, back to furniture. I mean, there's so much to do about that. And also knowing, keeping in mind, of course, that something that came out in 1914 might not be in a lodge in Northern Ontario. Like they could have much older furniture there because furniture just kind of hangs around, especially if it's made really well. So that's the kind of thing that I would think about a lot when it came to um, how I was establishing this setting and the kind of story I wanted to tell. And another thing that helped me with that is I knew I wanted to make a cozy mystery story because that's the kind of story that I like. So
Ooh.
that talks about a very specific era too when you think about it, and the kind of technology that they would have and the kind of tone that story would have, and all those things combined really helped me to quickly understand what I was aiming for when it came to uh, the look of the thing, the feel of the thing, and what the story would end up being.
That's okay. I have to ask because I my partner loves cozy mysteries, and so I absorb them mostly through osmosis. Of
Hmm.
like she's watching them, and I'm like, ah, this is the thing. I'm familiar with it. What? How do you go about making something feel cozy? Because
Yes.
there's a big difference between
Yeah.
like a thriller mystery and a cozy
Yes.
mystery, and that's everything from the visuals to the sound design to the character archetypes and like how things interact. What do you do so when someone looks at it, they go, "That's cozy"?
Yes. That is complicated. And I think a lot of it has to go with you got to go by feel, I think. And it's going to be different for lots of people, but if you look up cozy mystery, there do tend to be certain rules that people will follow if they want to be in that genre. And one of the things is in terms of suspense and thrilling, like kind of being a tamer version of that where people might not feel like being totally freaked out by something horribly gory or violent or psychologically disturbing. This is something you could sit down and watch with your grandma, for instance. That type of media is what we're talking about, where it does feel like you're just sitting with blanket on the couch with a cup of tea, and you're going to have a nice time, and there will be conflict and there will be danger and things that will happen, but that's going to be within very strict boundaries that are not going to be too unsettling or too out of bounds in terms of violence or sexuality or anything like that where you're going to be like super challenged.
Hmm.
There's definitely places for that type of media, but the expectation I think around cozy games or cozy mysteries, cozy stories is this idea that sometimes you just want to retreat away from certain parts of the world.
Mm.
And I think that's why I started initially, that my impulse was to make what I made is because I was trying to be a freelance illustrator and it was really tough going. I graduated into a recession and I was trying to be a magazine and newspaper illustrator, which, believe it or not, was kind of hard to do in the early mid 2000s. Um, so that was not the best decision on my part, and so I was very frustrated because I was trying everything I could possibly think of to like get my work out there and get people to see me, but yeah, it was a frustrating time. And when I started to want to recreate this look of the games that I liked, I wanted to feel those cozy feelings again, right? Cozy, comfy feelings. So it was natural for me to want to make not only something that was of the cozy mystery genre, but recall the kind of memories I had as a kid when I was sitting down at my dad's computer playing these games. Those were my very strong impulses when that drove everything else about the game.
That's cool. Speakeasy bringing up a really good point, saying I think
Yes.
not feeling the player is rushed is
Hmm.
helped. And yeah, it's
That
like
is that.
go ahead.
Oh, super. That one, that's so important. Absolutely. That's like one of the huge like pillars for me in terms of the kind of games that I like to play and the kind of game that I did want to design. Is there's a pause button in the Crimson Diamond, but it's not necessary. There's literally one little sequence near the end where it is somewhat time based, but even still, when you type into the text parser, like the game pauses. And even if you don't, the game is waiting for you. And it's more like a book than a movie or anything like that. It's patient. It's also not a game that you're going to accidentally progress through. There's a game that is the main inspiration for the Crimson Diamond, the Colonel's Bequest, which if you just walked into a room at the wrong time, you could advance time on the clock and suddenly,
Oh
there's
yeah.
you could just miss stuff, right? And I definitely didn't want to have that in my game. And so I've got um, this notebook feature that tells you in asterisks, it's got like little stars around it. Well, here's what you do to progress to the next stage. Do anything else you want. Feel free to explore to your heart's content. Ask them anybody any questions. Do whatever you want. When you're ready, and it's only when you're ready, you do this thing here. And yeah, the not feeling rushed thing is something that's super important to me, not just in game design, but just in life in general. I hate feeling rushed or having to like make decisions on the fly. And that's definitely for me a huge part of what cozy means and what the cozy genre this overall means to me.
Yeah. I think a bit of the lower stakes helps some too, where it's
Yes.
like
Yeah, yeah.
a like a small town, a personal dilemma, like and probably baked in other elements of it of like, oh, well, these people are fighting over the rights to, who owns this part of the house or whatever.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Uh, I really like that you mentioned like at the end of the game, you have like a moment that you do
Yeah.
have to make decisions in a rush. I think in game design, especially in a like tabletop setting, that is also important. Where it's like you
Mm,
have that coziness setting and an expectation of like, yeah, it's okay, go at your own pace, and then there's a moment of,
yeah.
oh, what are you gonna do? Gotta answer now. Something's
Yeah.
happening. And
Yeah.
even if it's not the highest stakes thing,
Mhm,
because you've built it as a a cozy thing, that small moment really
mhm.
hits well.
Yeah, I think overall with the game design, I did want there to be like this, yeah, this definite ratcheting up of like of stakes and of tension as you go through the chapters. And I tried to do that in a number of ways. Like definitely like that one more. Yeah, I mean, even still, you could still pause the game and like think as long as you want about what that is. But there is, yeah, that small timed event. The music changes, the environment changes. You're like you're in a new area that you've never been to before. There are deaths in the game that are usually much harder to get, and they become much easier all of a sudden to achieve a death in the game and in the last couple chapters. And yeah, so there's a lot of ways I did want the player to feel like the danger has increased to increase that drama aspect of it. But yeah, overall, when we get back to the denouement, you get to make a decision. Like the player, no matter what decisions you made up to that point, you can answer yes or no question and get a good or bad ending. And that was really important to me because I wanted someone who has committed to the game over its entire length. I wanted them to have a good ending. I'd feel so bad if they had spent all this time with me and with the game and not been able to make that choice of what they ultimately wanted the game to be at the end. And that was, yeah,
Oh,
really important to me.
that's cool. I appreciate that level of like, I don't know, there's a level of, again, with tabletop where you want that sort of interaction where like,
Yeah.
as a DM, I want to know what a player wants out of a game so I can kind
Hmm.
of start shaping it that way.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's really cool to do that in a video game too, where it's like, oh, well, here's the branches, kind of which one are you going to lean towards?
Yeah, and I think even we talked about before we started today about how you just want in general, like when we're talking as we're talking now, like we want this to be a good experience for the people who are watching, right? And so that's a big that's always going to be a consideration. And we also talked about that balance between making what you want to make, right? And so how do you balance making what you want to make versus making this something that's appealing to people
Hmm.
and something that's going to be a positive experience for them. And I will say for the majority of the time that I was, well, maybe not the majority of the time for but the reason I started this game at all was because I was like it was for me it was therapeutic for me for
Mm.
years to get to work on this project where I made all the calls. I was 100% in control. I didn't rely on anybody else, and I didn't have to um, because for instance, like I would send promotional postcards to like illustration clients and magazines and newspapers, and you would just never hear back most of the time, and you just
Yep.
feel like you're being rejected. You feel like what you're doing doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take away that expectation of any response, like I'm just working on this game at home quietly on my computer, there's no expectation of people are not responding to what I'm making because I'm not putting it out there yet. And for the longest time, it existed like that for me where what do I want to see, what do I want to put in this game, and that was all it was until 2018 when I showed the game, the demo chapter 1 of it. I showed it publicly, and then that's when I saw people reacting to it positively and getting excited by it, and that's when I started to think about, well, this isn't just for me, this is something I do want people to enjoy. And I started to make changes based on that. I mean, the default control scheme used to be the default Sierra control scheme of moving a character around, which is not, it's not the way people do things anymore. And I learned that very quickly because when I showed at that event, you would be tapping the button to move in one direction and tapping it again to stop. No one knew how to do that because no one had seen it in like 30 years, probably, right? So
Yeah.
I changed the default so that if you hold the arrow keys down, she's going to move in the direction you want to move. There's a little things like that, but also bigger things like when I launched the game, there's a hyperlink in the main menu that opens to like a universal hint system style hint book.
Mm.
So if you get stuck in the game, you can just go to that site and you could find exactly what you need to do to like move you forward in the game. And everything in between from those two things is just stuff where if I'd watch people playing the game, either streaming it on Twitch or watching them play at an event, or if they email me with feedback, I always take it very seriously because I did want this game to be enjoyable, especially because it was a style of game that had not been seen in a really long time, or something that maybe someone's never played at all, really. And I wanted to, yeah, it's just about almost like being a good host for something, just like as you are now, trying to we try to make this a welcoming atmosphere, and so people come here, they have a nice time, and they come out with a positive experience from it, and that was so important.
uh, because this is actually very related to what we were just talking about. Because you had mentioned Hero Quest.
Hmm.
Speakeasy wanted to know: were there any board games or TTRPGs that were influences on the Crimson Diamond, like art, story, mechanics, etc.?
Hmm. Oh, 100%. Of Clue. Clue 100%.
Yeah.
When yeah, and I mentioned just playing with it like I used to, like like a two-dimensional like dollhouse, but even beyond that, when the game started just as pixel art rooms, you don't want to just make bedrooms and bathrooms. You want to like, well, what other kinds of rooms could there possibly be in a house? And I had my Clue board, the one that I grew up with. And Crimson Lodge has a study in it. It has a billiards room in it. It has a conservatory in it because of Clue. And actually the conservatory has the same green and yellow tiles like the edition of Clue that I have has. And like to the point of there was a billiards room that I created with no reason for there to be in the game at all. And I had to eventually like design a puzzle around the billiards table, which I did do. But as I said, I didn't design most of this game with any thought that it was actually going to be a game. I'm like, I want to make a billiards room because it's in Clue. And then I had to think about later why that would be there in the first place. So that was definitely that was probably the biggest visual inspiration board game wise would be Clue.
I could
But it, like
definitely see
mechanic
that.
wise,
Yeah.
Hero Quest. Yeah,
Yeah.
furniture. The furniture. It's all about the furniture.
Was there anything like narratively that you were like, "Ooh, I really like this," or that influenced it, or is that more of a comes from like story driven world versus gameplay?
Hmm. I think probably both because I knew in a game people would want to do investigative stuff. And so I knew there was going to be, I don't know how much do we want to talk about like the mechanics of it, but there's like fingerprinting. You have to get fingerprints. You have to ask people questions. You have to collect clues. I think just the mystery genre in general is really good for adventure games because a lot of the
Hmm.
stuff a detective would do is stuff players would do in an adventure game anyway. So that was really great. But yeah, just my familiarity with like mystery media in general really did influence the type of story I wanted to make and the kind of characters that are in the story. Um, they're kind of very I don't want to call them stock characters, but I was very concerned that I didn't want people to get confused about what people were going to be like or what their motivations were going to be like. And so I kind of made the characters fairly simple characters, although they get into a bunch of business, but they tend to be more straightforward than otherwise. And that's something I actually want to change when I get to my sequel. Like I do want to make some characters that are more kind of ambiguous in terms of their motivation. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff came from all like the Columbo I watched, Miss Marple, Hercule Poirot, Shatland. I watch a lot of BritBox. I find, and it's an education for sure.
BritBox has so many cozy mysteries. Uh,
Yes.
Shout out to Father Brown as one of them. I feel
Oh
like
my,
is
yes, yes. The new season has come out
oh
recently of
yeah,
that. Yes,
that's one of those that I've seen because my partner loves it, and it's like
yes.
it's a weirdly delightful show.
Exactly. So that kind of tone, and it's funny because when you start watching a lot of these mystery stories or mystery shows, you get this like feeling of there's definitely a broad range of tones in some of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to see about different series, and sometimes I can just tell something's not going to be for me. There was one series that I tried watching where the first episode that had the detective go down to someone's basement, and there was like 9 corpses in there from like some serial murder, and I'm like, this is a bit
Wow.
like that's a heavy start, right? Like
Yeah.
we're gonna ramp up to this, and so and then even just the way the characters were, and just you just kind of get this feeling like I don't think this one's quite for me. But sometimes they're like too light for me as well.
Mm.
Like that on the other end, like Jonathan Creek, for instance, I watched an episode, and I'm like, oh, this is not quite exactly the tone I'm looking for. But the great thing is there's just so many shows that you're definitely gonna find tons that are actually gonna work for you. But the tone of something is like, yeah, so important to me, and that's something that was very important to me when I make whatever I make.
Yeah. How do you? I kind of asked this earlier, but I don't know. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
ask it again because I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what things do you look for in other media, in
Mm-hmm.
games, in television stuff
Yes.
that are like showcases of the tone, and then you go, oh,
Yeah.
now I know what this is going to be, because that also helps as idea of like, oh well, now I know how to influence the stuff that I make with these things. Like, what do you look for?
Yes. It's more like what I see that like kind of turns me off more than anything.
Yeah.
When I see a show that I think it just comes off as really cynical and it comes off as mean,
Mm.
that type of show I don't care for too much. I mean sometimes it's satire and stuff which I can kind of get behind, but sometimes I just it doesn't feel good. It feels and it's all again by feeling. But yeah, if I find something like for instance like watching I've watched the first episode of I think it's called The Patriot on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
You know that show?
Nope,
I
haven't seen
started
it.
watching the first episode. I'm like, this is really mean. I mean, maybe it's supposed to be funny, but this seems really mean, like meaner than I want. And I don't mind like if something's going to be mean or anything, but sometimes it just for me, I just don't get a good vibe off of something. And so that's when I see something like that. When I see um people like of course when you're gonna have conflict people are not gonna be nice now, but I feel like um I like something that feels like genuine and authentic and like well meaning and well intentioned, and it's kind of hard to really describe because so much of like the decisions I make when I'm making something is by feel, and because I work mostly by myself, I don't have to justify that to anybody and I don't have to explain it to anybody. So a lot of the stuff I do is like it just happens in my head and I just go in that direction or away from something. But yeah, it's um it's difficult to really I think articulate what I mean by that. But I just sometimes get a sense of watching something where I don't know if I met the people who made this, if I would want to hang out with them because they seem mean. I don't know how else to explain it.
That no, that is I've think we talked about this in like meetings and I think in our streams is like yeah, like how a piece of media is attempting to show you how someone is smart is informing you of how
Yes.
the writer
Yeah.
thinks smartness works.
Yeah. Stuff like that. Yeah.
Cuz like whoever writes like House MD is like, "Oh, a smart person is a jackass who's just right all the time." Versus very much how other people write smart where it's like, "Oh, someone who like actively, you know, incorporates the opinions of people around them who know better
Mhm.
than them in those fields versus I'm always right.
Yes. I agree, but I will also say I will make room for if something like House, where the performances are like they just managed to pull off something where this guy's not likable, but Hugh Laurie has just this incredible amount of charisma and comic timing. Where I'm like, fine, you're kind of a jerk, and you would be really hard to work with slash impossible to work with. But yeah, I'll make room for people who can pull that off. But when they don't, when they don't, it's a toughie. It's a tough one to really to deal with. And and stuff like when I'm watching a show, for instance, if the protagonist, I was watching this detective show, and the protagonist, um, she, I didn't like her because she was really unethical. Like she kind of tried to um, throw her coworker under the bus, and he not done anything. She was just trying to throw him under the bus because I think she was afraid that he would say something about her, something true about her, that she had been unprofessional, for instance. And it's just like it's hard for me to get on board when somebody just seems like they just are wanting to screw other people over, and that's the person I'm supposed to
Yeah.
get behind. And not to say like it can't be done well. Like I'm always open to someone convincing me that someone can be likable even when they just are doing stuff like that I don't agree with. But a lot of the times it does turn me off of a character
Hmm.
and makes me not want to like follow them through a show.
Yeah, that's a big thing in when I in video games and tabletop games and
Mm,
shows media. Just like if I don't want to spend time with these
yeah,
people, like
yeah.
I don't want to do this. Uh, it's like I'm not gonna watch it. I'm not gonna play it. Like these people are too good. Speaking saying cough. Breaking Bad. Yeah, I dropped. I watched like 3 episodes of
Oh, wow.
Breaking Bad and turned to
Oh.
my friend and was like, is this the show? Is like, are they just always going to pick the worst decision and then go with it? And then terrible things will happen and then they will choose the worst decision again. They were like,
Right.
yeah, that's the show. I was like, okay, I'm
Oh my
done.
god.
Thanks.
It's so funny because actually that means that my threshold is actually higher than yours. Because I
Yeah.
actually got through all of Breaking Bad. I'm like, oh, this is like, I kind of, this is a pretty well made show. I actually, which really good. I actually like Better Call Saul better than Breaking Bad. I will say that. And I don't even know if you need to finish Breaking Bad to appreciate Better Call Saul. I
Mm,
do think Better Call Saul is a better show. I like the characters and the writing a lot more, and Saul Goodman is definitely more of a sympathetic character than Walter White is. But I was able to get through all of Breaking Bad and enjoy it for the most part, and so yeah. But even still, I still feel where exactly where you're coming from with that. I will want to give a quick aside because I didn't bring up Breaking Bad, but Chat did. Is I actually did an illustration that is in Breaking Bad.
really?
Yeah, when I was back in my freelance illustration days, I did a lot of work for the Alibi, which is like this alt news weekly in Albuquerque. And it just so happened that, and I would do covers for it. And it was like a big color cover, like a big. And so the set dresser just grabbed a bunch of them and put them on a table. And in the end of season 3, I think, there's this shot of like a table with like a lab report on it and stuff. And like you can see this cover of this alt news weekly. And they hold on it for like a few seconds. And they also hold on that same shot because it's a key shot when they do like recaps, episode recaps. And so I have it just showed up and they didn't tell me because it just cetera. But I did see it when I watched the show. So I'm glad I got all the way through Breaking Bad, or else I would have missed that.
Okay, well, when your own stuff's in it, that's totally different. Then you'd watch it for whatever reason. Okay, I wanted to. You had brought up characters earlier too, and
Mhm.
I mentioned this earlier too, of like writing characters to be distinct, and
Yes.
I feel like that's especially important when it is text only. But I think
Yes.
that is something we can all learn from when we are creating characters, NPCs, PCs, whatever. What goes into making a character sound distinct and like being
Yeah.
different and dare I say that makes them interesting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say also that this was my first game that I ever made, and it was also like basically since going to school, this was the first story that I ever wrote.
Mm,
Um, I
wow.
never I never took any like creative writing classes or anything like that. Not even in high school did I take creative writing classes or anything. So it was my first thing that I wrote that I actually shared publicly. So first game that I wrote and things like that. So it's interesting to me to think about how I went about it and how to write characters. And I will say also that I do think that when you're writing characters that are kind of like the so-called bad guys or are kind of unlikable, I think it is important to kind of see things from their perspective and see why they might be the way they are and why
Yes.
they act the way they act. That's very, very important to me. Like that's another thing when I'm looking at and I see someone that just seems like the director or creator is just dumping on this particular character and they're just
Ugh.
irredeemably bad, and you can't, there's not really a reason, and there's not really, you can't see why they might potentially be like that. I find it kind of, I don't want to say lazy, but I just find it not as compelling really, because if that person is bad, for no reason, then it just, I don't get that invested.
Yeah.
when I when I think about, like someone like Nessa or Corvus or something in in the Crimson Diamond, I do have a lot of sympathy for Nessa, and I do see why she would be the way she is. I mean, she had this nice cushy life as a young girl in England. Her dad got this being at the bonnet, like, I want to be a settler in North America, and they just uprooted the family, and now they're like, clearing out, like, doing all this hard graft, trying to clear out this acreage and everything, and it's just all, it's very crude, and it's not what she's used to, and so of course she's going to hate it. And then her brother is born in Crimson, and he loves it because he doesn't know anything else. And so there's always this kind of, our rift is already starting between them there, because he does not see what he did not have the experiences that she had, and she feels very alienated by that. And because she's the only one in the family who feels like she misses that their life, that they, and she had no choice in the matter either. So um, all that is stuff that, I mean, it's in the game in bits of writing here and there, but a lot of it is definitely not addressed directly or below the surface. It's just something that's in my head, that it is important to me to think about why this character is the way they are, and then with that in my head, how they would talk. It's funny because you talk about how there's not voice acting in the Crimson Diamond. It's just all text. But when I watch streamers play the game and they give the characters their own voices, something about like the way that it's written and like the way the character's speech portrait is, and then the way that the speech portrait animates, a lot of people are doing a very similar voice, even though they might
Really?
they might not have heard each other. And I guess that means that there's something distinctive that's coming through in all aspects of that character, which I think is really great. Um, but it's funny when you talk about specifically talking about writing dialogue. I write the dialogue. I don't pre-write the dialogue, so I write the story from beginning to end in like broad strokes. And then
Mm-hmm.
as I develop each chapter, I start to get more specific about what's going on in each chapter. And I only write the dialogue when the game gets to that point of the dialogue, because I feel like that's when I have the most information about how the characters would be feeling at this point in time based on what has happened already. And with all that information, I'm able to then specifically, I'm just writing the dialogue in engine too. Like in amongst the code, I'm writing dialogue lines. Like this is what is being said right now. There's no separate documents for dialogue in it. But I found it, that was the easiest way for me to get a handle on what people would actually say, is in that moment what they would say and thinking about their characters. I kind of realize now that I've had the doing contract work for other studios and seeing how people actually are meant to make games, like with the whole design document, and they gray box everything and then they plug all the art assets in. And I just totally did not do that way. And now when I'm making my I'm making a small game right now, and I'm trying to take everything I've learned from all these other people who have much more experience in the industry, and I'm trying to do it like the right way. I'm finding it really difficult. I find that the way that
Mm.
I kind of organically moved into how I made the Crimson Diamond actually does work better for me, especially when it comes to the writing part. Because I was trying to write something in chapter 5 of this game. I'm like, I have no idea what's supposed to happen in this chapter. Even though I've written the broad strokes of everything, I don't have any idea how people are feeling in this at this moment. And I can't know it until I get to that point in development. And that's another reason why working mostly basically on my own is really helpful, because I don't have to worry about changing direction on something where I'm like, okay, well, you just did all that artwork or you did all that writing, but we're going to just throw that all out because I've just changed my mind on something. I don't have to take that into consideration when I'm making my creative decisions, because it's just only my work really. So it's easy for me to pick and choose what I want, how I want to go. And if I feel like the story needs to divert for a little bit or it needs to change, then it's totally fine. And I don't feel any pressure and any expectation. Also, not having a publisher was big on that too. I didn't have anyone trying to tell me, well, if you do it this way, then it's going to, appeal to this demographic or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly like, well, what feels right for the story, and hopefully people are going to be along for the ride.
Aw. Wow. In the code? That's a what like
Yeah.
I could in my head that kind of makes sense. And I feel like the wrong way and the right way is mostly the right way is you did it. Like that's congratulations, like you've completed the thing. That was probably the right way to do it. I could definitely understand in like a bigger studio setting where you would have like more people involved like you're talking about where yeah, okay, everybody needs to know where this is going from the beginning
Yes.
or they
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
be able to follow along. But yeah, when it's just you, it does seem like yeah, the way it works. It's kind of like what we talked about, like DMs taking notes and like how to
Yeah.
orchestrate things. Like, what will you remember? What is helpful for you?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. I mean, right way, wrong way. You made a game. Good job.
I don't know if I'm going to duplicate exactly that same process, but I am seeing like it's also like learning, yeah, what is best for me and how to make something. And yeah, that's the reason why I keep coming back to how things make me feel, because so much of what I did was not articulated to other people in terms of like the decisions I made. And because I wasn't working with other people, when you work with other people, you have to have meetings and talk about, well, here, this is why I think we should do it this way. This is why I think we should do it this way. But I never had to get to that stage when I was making what I was making, because it was just kind of living in my head for the most part, and I could go according to my impulses. And so that was a really nice way to do it. But definitely not a way that it's not workable if you're working with other people.
Hmm. Did you have anything in mind when writing characters as like a either like punctuation cues or
Hmm,
things that
hmm,
you
hmm.
had that you were like, oh, I really want to make it distinct. I'm gonna add this. What is it?
Yes.
What are those things?
Yeah, it's kind of almost like a rhythm. Like people's speech has different rhythms.
Ooh.
People first of all, they have different word choices, but they also have preferences on how long their sentences are, how many, if they do a lot of commas in their conversation. Also, yeah, rhythm is a huge thing I think when it comes to dialogue for me. And for someone like, for instance, there's a character called Margot, and Margot is French Canadian, and even though I did not write her like her dialect in a French Canadian dialect, I didn't do that. But I had an idea of like, okay, this is, French Canadian cadence of speech is like this in my head. And I wrote her dialogue thinking about that, even, not writing dialogue, giving her like the I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Dagger of Amon Ra or Colonel's Bequest, and there are like these French ladies, and like they write the dialogue so like along with the accents. I didn't do that, but I did think about the rhythm of what her speech would be like. And so when I would, another good way to test a rhythm is to say it out loud and think about being that character and kind of trying to embody that character a little bit and speaking the lines and seeing if that feels like the rhythm that you'd want to go for. And so I'd like to think that if someone was genuinely French Canadian or wanted to do a French Canadian accent, which people have done when they stream it, it fits. It fits with the word choices and it fits with the rhythm of that character's speech. And I did try to think about that for other characters. Like some characters are going to be more blunt, right? Some characters are going to just talk in short sentences, um, use simpler words, or use certain words in substitution for others, even though suitable. It's just the type of Ontario dialect or whatever dialect they might have would just shoulda, coulda, or being just kind of apostrophize dropping a G here or there. That type
Hmm.
of speech also just kind of gives it a little bit of character for the player and cues about what type of person this character is. Do they use contractions? Do they not use contractions? When do they use contractions? Like there's so many tools beyond just actually hearing an audible voice that give you an idea of the type of person this is through their speech.
That's cool. Rhythm is such a good one, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's what I'm not even sure I've brought up on like building character stuff. That is really smart. Um, and yeah, everything you talk about, like the blunt being short sentences, like all those things, very helpful. Uh, I'm curious for you have people, these characters that people are going to interact with. Um, what do you do for how they're going to interact with them? Like, how much do you think about, like, oh, the room that they're going to meet this person in is this room, and it is significant for these reasons? Like, because that's kind of a big part of a character is also the scenery in which they are in, like how
Hmm.
they're introduced, where you find them. Are those things that you consider and like build into it?
Yeah, a big part of the design documents that I would write, and I started doing that around chapter 5 of 7, which better late than never, was where people are when you talk to them in certain times in the game, because it does, as you say, it does set the scene. It gives them something to do that might be indicative of actions that they're taking in the game or they will be taking in the future. That was super important to me in terms of also the logistics of seeing someone pop up somewhere and then pop up in another place. And if you kind of cross that path, there would be no way for them to get from one place to the other without you seeing them. Like the things like that, I did think about. I also I didn't want people to just be standing around and delivering dialogue. Just like when you
Hmm.
think about movies, right? When you think of, you don't want people like, shot, reverse shot conversation, moving around doing something that shows you something about, gives you insight about what the character is like as a person, how they're feeling at that time, and also an action that's related to the story, right? And so I did think about that stuff and mostly for visual interest, but it also is informational. And when you look at characters at different times of the game, it does give you like a cue of like they're looking frustrated or they're looking busy or they're looking, impatient or whatever else they're feeling at that time based on what's happening in the story. That will give you a cue of their character at that time. And that was something I definitely did think about. And yeah, the actions that they're doing. And it's a matter of when you do it all yourself and you kind of are integrating every aspect of it, you can think about that stuff holistically, right? Like, I want the writing to be this way. I want them to look this way. I want them to animate this way at this time. And it's not a matter of like deciding, well, why does it have to be like that? That's just something that I can feel. And also, when I'm getting to the point of that story where I need this to connect to something that happened before, there is like an arc almost. I don't know. Have you ever done like immersive theater?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, you'd love it.
I
You'd
mean,
love it. As an RP,
tabletop RPGs, kind of, but yeah, like
yeah,
immersive
it
theater
is. It is.
specifically, no.
Yeah, specifically because yeah, you can. Well, I went to one called A Life and Trust. In where was I? Oh my gosh, New York. New York? It might have been New York. And so this idea is like you follow characters around, right? And like you see their stories as they move through this building. And it's on like a 1 hour loop. And so you can follow one character through their loop, or you can like run into other characters and follow them. And
Ooh.
so there's all these story arcs that are going around. And not to say I had done that specifically, but just being mindful of, yeah, like in chapter 5, no, in chapter 4, Evan gets a bit of bad news, and as chapter 4 progresses, his actions like progress to reach a logical conclusion and that type of idea of like, okay, well, yeah, you're seeing this character move through the story and get affected by the story. That was important to me, especially in key moments like that, to think about.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely huge in writing characters, and that can be very easy to not do in as a DM. Is that letting characters change? Like, yeah, they
Hmm.
got bad news, and this is how it's affecting them every time
Yeah,
you are
yeah.
reintroduced to them. Such a good thing to keep in mind with characters. That's very smart of you.
Yeah, I mean, and then they might talk differently based on
Mm-hmm.
that. They might talk differently because some people they're more talkative when they're in a good mood. When they're not in a good mood, they might talk in shorter sentences. Like there's so much that changes for a person just from day to day, minute to minute, really. Your posture changes like depending on how you're feeling or who you're talking to or what you're going to be doing in that day. Yeah, there's so much information that you can convey in all these different ways, and if you just touch on a few of them, and they can carry across to the player, then it does make that person feel like that's a real person. And especially if you can kind of understand why they're behaving the way they're behaving, perhaps, or even if you don't, like you want to understand why they've changed their behavior, that can be a really powerful story point.
Totally. All right, I'm curious. What is I want to know for you personally what makes a compelling character? Because like you have all these different things that we've talked about, and
Hmm.
like you can't generally use all of them at once. They're
Hmm.
all useful things to have, but like what creates something that you're like, this is a compelling character, either through work you've done or uh, something that you go, ah, this is my example from Star Trek Deep Space Nine or whatever.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about how to make a compelling character, I think the character, at least in at least one way, they have to feel really strongly about it. at least in one
Oh.
way.
They have to feel real
And
strongly about what? Sorry?
about something, and it
Mm.
doesn't even matter what that thing is, because um, whatever is applicable to the story, really, or I don't know what, maybe even not. I don't know. I It's exciting to see someone that is super into something or super passionate about something that then causes them also people, if they're feeling strongly about something, then they have a tendency to act. And then you want to see action borne out through how they're feeling or what they're saying. And even it could be like, for instance, Nancy Maple, the main character of the Crimson Diamond. I I didn't really think too much about what her characterization is because I thought she was kind of just basically a standard tropey, enthusiastic, nosy sleuth. But yes, she loves rocks. She loves mineralogy. She's really interested in that stuff. And actually, what people find the most endearing about her is that you can just tell people about rock facts and talk about mineralogy to the other characters. She just loves to share her knowledge. She loves to, learn new things. And, it's not a controversial thing that she feels strongly about. It's just more like, I really like this thing. I want to share. And you know what? It's funny because I think about what I find interesting when people are talking about stuff. I used to watch these wine reviews. I don't drink and I don't, but this guy was so into talking about these wines and he was so knowledgeable that I was fascinated watching this guy talk about wine. That kind of thing is, I think, very compelling to get to listen to. When you see someone who's really expert into something and really passionate about it, talking about it, it almost doesn't matter what it is. And I think when it comes to writing a character that's compelling, that type of feeling is important, because I don't think if a character is kind of blasé about literally everything, I just there's nothing for me to really like latch onto about, like, why do I want to know this character
Hmm.
if they're not feeling particularly strongly about anything. It can be hard. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but for me, the characters that are in the Crimson Diamond, I think they're all very driven by what they want. And it's all that really differentiates them is how far they're willing to go to get that thing. And that's the interesting part.
Oh, that's a really good way to put it. Yes. Oh man, that is intriguing. Uh, you were talking about talking passionately about things that even if you don't care. There's a YouTuber, the Geek Critique, and like he loves Sonic the Hedgehog, and I don't. I really don't enjoy like classic Sonic games. Not even like the new ones, like the old ones that everybody says no, that's good Sonic. Don't like them. I love listening to him because it is fascinating to hear
Yeah.
someone that has such a different opinion go
Yeah.
into such detail about
Yeah.
why they like it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that
It's the best.
yeah, and that's really good for using for character development. It's a really good point. I like that. I think strong feeling very important. Uh, so uh, I want to know. Okay, talking about tabletop RPGs in general, and you mentioned Pathfinder
Hmm.
and D&D 3.5. I want to know, like, as a video game designer, what have you learned about game design and have used for video games that you learned from TTRPGs and vice versa? What have you learned from doing video games that you're like, oh, I can apply this in my tabletoping?
Woof. Oh, that's a doozy of a question. Um, I think, my experience with like tabletop role playing games and my experience with computer role playing games, that really, it kind of cemented this idea that setting for me is a great starting point
Okay.
when writing, when developing a story, when developing characters. And that part is yeah, when I think about other creators, and often this gets asked is, yeah, how did you come up with this story? Like, how did you, what was the impetus to this story? Like, what was the germ of that idea that caused the story to be? And it's in any number of things, except for some people it's a character they have in their head that they see very strongly in their head, they identify with. um, some people, it could be like there's a moment that they want to recreate in the context around that moment, and then getting, the character and the setting to converge upon that moment. That's something I do think about too. But what I love about, yeah, role playing games is like the setting, the world building is so important. in tabletop. I was actually thinking, it's so funny to me thinking about tabletop role playing games. They kind of, yeah, you have a setting that's provided, and it's usually really well fleshed out, and then the players bring characters, and it's I don't know if has it ever really been done the other way around. Has it ever been role playing game? You get these very very specific characters, and the player is then expected to bring a setting. Like it doesn't. I don't know if that's ever happened. Maybe it has. It's interesting to,
That sounds like a
but
fun challenge, actually. It's just everybody make a character. Don't talk to each other. Just make a character, and then we're gonna just smash them all together somewhere.
well, or it would be like the scenario you would buy would just be characters. That's
Mm.
all it would be, and like it's almost impossible to work backwards. I feel like it's for that because in order for the character to even exist, there has to be a context for them. So I don't even know if it's possible to do it that way. But when I think about how I started the Crimson Diamond and how grounded it is in geology and geography, I mean, Crimson Ontario is a garnet mining town. There were garnet mines in Ontario. There were diamond mines in northern Ontario as well, until fairly recently. And I think about the history of just human development based on geology and geography. I went to this incredible talk at the Bancroft Jamboree where they talked about how the types of rocks that are in an area will dictate the types of minerals that are present in the soil. And the types of minerals that are present in the soil dictates the type of plants that grow in that area, partially the type of plants that grow in this area. The types of plants that grow in this area affects human development. Like if there's like a lot of like really beautiful trees that have very nice lumber, gonna people are gonna come to this area and they want to do lumber. And that influences the development of cities and towns and everything like that. And geography as well. I mean, if you have a beautiful area there could be a port, then people are gonna have development around that area. And that's how things start. It starts from actually just the actual very rocks and the formation of the earth. There's this really good book called what's it called? Wisdom Sits in Places by Keith H. Basso, and it's the book that in Anthropology 101, like I think it gets assigned like all the time, and it's about the history of places and how certain areas across history for thousands of years are places that humans converge because there's water here or there's like a certain like favorable like land composition that makes this a good place for farming or just a good place for a lookout to build defense, things like this, and those things don't change over time, but they are there as sites that then encourage or attract people, and that brings context and that brings story. And that's why for me when I started making what I made, it was so important to have an understanding of that history because that's where everything else comes from for me. That's where the why are the characters there, and they would be there because of these features like these garnets. That's why they're there. Why are the garnets there? I mean, they just keep on going backward and backward until you get to the root of it. So I guess that's why I don't think you could have uh, characters without a setting. Like I don't think it's even possible because we're physical people. We have to put our bodies somewhere. Like we have to eat, we have to sleep. So
Yeah.
it's probably not the case. But yeah, I would say that for me, for a long way to answer this is the appreciation of tabletop was this respect for lore and setting, and using that as this jumping off point for people to create their stories and their characters, because that's definitely how I went about what. And with the other part of that story was the other question was how just the reverse of that, right? Which
Hmm.
was um, how like my game has caused me to consider thinking about tabletop role playing. I guess for me, it's this invitation to be a kind of character that I might not necessarily usually be. Like I haven't had a lot of chance to do a lot of tabletop. Like I mentioned, I did a bit of D&D 3.5. I did a bit of Pathfinder. I haven't done it in years though. But I think next time, and the characters that I did create at those times um, were kind of people I probably might have been like had I actually been in that context. I was always like, I also played a lot of World of Warcraft. I always play rogue characters because I'm like, okay, well, I'm not big and tough. I'm like a small person, so I like to hide and I like to use subterfuge and everything. but I think, after finishing the Crimson Diamond and writing these characters, I would it's the I think the fun part of tabletop that I haven't really indulged in yet is this idea of trying to be somebody else that's completely not like you.
Yeah.
After that experience of making these characters that are not like me, although I do see where they're coming from in a lot of respects. I think that would be a nice creative challenge for my next tabletop opportunity. Would be just trying to play someone completely out of the realm of what I'm used to.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about tabletop
Yeah,
is like, oh,
yeah.
you mean I can play someone that's like not socially inept? Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, I can play someone that's just a genius. Oh, okay,
Mhm,
cool. I
mhm.
can play someone that's strong, that's like, you know, set in these different ways. Like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that experimentation of it is fun. I mean, it's also one of the things I
Yeah,
really like about writing. It's just you get
yeah,
to
yeah,
write these characters like that and explore a part of humanity that you might not be able to do,
yeah.
or
100%.
maybe not as well as the characters you made. I'm very curious because about with world building that you appreciate and that you've done for stuff when you're playing something. How do you interact with other worlds? Do you like are
Hmm.
you someone that like looks for all the notes? Are you like constantly kind of pitching questions in your head of like how these things went around? Are you like doing extra dialogue? Are you constantly finding dots and trying to make lines that
Hmm.
connect them? Like how do you interact with someone else's world?
That is a really, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good question. I guess I can answer it in terms of what I've been playing recently. I've been playing a lot of Caves of Cud recently,
A
which
lot of what?
is
Sorry?
a lot of Caves of Cud. I don't know if you know that one.
I don't. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It basically it's a roguelike. It started out as a roguelike, and that's what its kind of its bones are. But what's interesting about it is that you can play in different. There are different like play modes. So roguelike is the Cud is QUD, Caves of Cud, and it's very like low res looking pixelated top down type of RP. It looks like it's an RPG roguelike type of, and you can play it as a roguelike, which means, yeah, you die, and you can die really easily in this game. Then you start from the beginning. You can play something called RPG mode, which is a little bit more forgiving when it comes to encounters.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can play it in wander mode, which is what I did, which is basically almost nothing is hostile towards you, and you gain XP by like learning about the world. And
Okay.
learning about the world comes from discovering ruins or different on the world map, or reading interesting facts in, like, there's tons of these books that are in the world as well. So if you read in one of these books and you find out a piece of lore or a bit of history, you get XP that way. And I've really had a very positive experience with this game because it does alter how you play it. And it made me like, I don't think, when I was playing stuff like Morrowind or Daggerfall, where there's all those books in those games, and I don't think I started to read them, but there's just so many of them. I kind of stopped. But
Yeah.
because Caves of Cud has this way of, like, it does reward you for reading these books and learning histories and everything like this, that it did encourage me to want to learn more and to explore more, because that's the only way you can get XP in this game. Like in wander mode, if you actually kill stuff in wander mode, it doesn't even give you XP, so you're completely not incentivized to have any hostile encounters really.
Huh.
um, but yeah, that one really encouraged me to explore and truly understand what was going on. I think in typically with an RPG like a CRPG, when I play them, I hate to admit it, but I just like to go get through the battles and level up and get really strong, and just like mow stuff down that has been giving me. I love that character development in terms of like that strength and ability. That yeah, I'm very much like, yeah, backstab crit person, and just getting those crits a lot. It's so much fun, and I tend not to engage so much in the actual lore of what I'm doing, which feels weird because I'm someone who does place a lot of stock in story, and I really care about story, at least when I'm writing them. But in RPGs, I tend not to know too much about the lore of what I'm exploring. I get kind of wrapped up in the systems that I'm playing in. And like, I think about World of Warcraft, where I have all these add-ons and everything. I'd be raiding and stuff, and I didn't know the lore stuff. I knew that he dropped good loot, and I would want the Warglaives.
If the like the mechanics and stuff and are
Yeah.
stuff that attracts you, think like what mechanically is something that draws you to it. Like, oh, I want to play this class because of this, or like, oh, I need to fight this boss because X. What pulls you towards those things?
Yeah, I always gravitate, as I said, to like rogue characters with the daggers and the high crits, high agility, high dexterity. Um, what draws me about that? I think it's because I'm trying to imagine, like, yeah, what would I actually be like in that, like, um, I'm not like a big bruiser type of person. And also it's funny because I think about like magic in D&D and Pathfinder stuff, and I've never played a character really with that much magic because I didn't want to deal with all the bookkeeping and the housekeeping that has to deal with like loading up spells and picking spells and everything. I did like the fact that Rogue was a simpler class, and I think that's also why I gravitated toward it in World of Warcraft. Also, I was on a PvP server, so the fact that I could be in stealth was very valuable to me.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Just so that was another reason, but I also just in general, I like stealth. I like kind of being left alone. I like not being paid attention to unless I choose it. And I think even just as deep as that goes, that's why Rogue really does appeal to me. Um, yeah, I think and that's why when I was doing, playing tabletops, and that's why the Rogue would be, because I felt like that's who I would ideally like to be if I was actually in that situation. But I would like to explore those other types of characters that because like, yeah, I think about like daggers are cool. Like they're lightweight and they're cute and they're not that heavy and
All valuable things. Those are good things to describe
all
something.
valuable stuff. Like I like leather armor better than mail or plate. That stuff was like, so heavy. It's like 70 pounds for like plate armor. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I've done a little bit of like armored combat fighting, and like full armor is
Mm.
wildly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, really in real life?
Yeah, I've
Holy
done
cow.
some SCA for a while, so you have like a mix of like some chain, some plate,
Oh.
some leather, uh like a it's it's fun to just go around and hit people with
Yeah, I
sticks,
bet.
or mostly get hit with sticks. I was not very good.
How many pounds of armor would you have on?
I have no idea. I truly don't know. I remember it's very heavy the first time I put it on, and then after like
Yeah.
maybe like 4 or 6 months, I started to get more like comfortable and confident in it, and being like, oh, can I roll in this? Like, could I do a roll? Like, let me try and jump this small fence. Like, could I actually? And like just
Right.
getting that feel. But yeah, it's just so different. It is really heavy.
I guess also it must be a really good workout, actually.
Yeah.
Um, I just remember when I was in high school, I was a kid that I never wanted to spend time going back to my locker to get books. So I just put all my books and binders in my backpack, and it was like 33 pounds, and that was really heavy for me. And I just never like the idea of carrying a bunch of heavy stuff just never appealed to me. I also think about like ninja and samurai and that type of class. Like I would love to. That would be the type of class I'd probably be, and they never had, they didn't really use plate armor, just more lightly armored. And I think another reason why I also kind of like fell in with the rogue stuff is I'd like to think that someone who is, yeah, smaller stature, or someone who's lightly armored but very quick and agile, the kind of person I would project myself to be in that situation, could actually like conquer, and like they could actually succeed in that world, is what I
Yeah.
guess. It's kind of like that wish fulfillment.
Totally get that. It makes perfect sense. Uh, Probably I got like two more questions for you, and then we're
Mhm.
gonna wrap it up. Um, I wanted to know because as an artist, as a creative person, this is a thing that has been asked multiple times that I still struggle with is what do you do to like recharge your creativity?
Mm,
Because it's
mhm.
so easy to burn yourself out. It's so easy to just be like, oh, let me do this. Let me do this. Oh, let me write this down. Oh, I gotta build. I gotta start prep my session for next week. Oh, I would need to write this. Oh, I've got to work
Yeah,
on this art. What do you do that just helps you stabilize and get excited to do it again?
yeah. It is a very good question. It's a question that creative people all kind of have to grapple with, I think. Um, I did mention the Crimson Diamond took me many years, from like roughly 2009 to like 2024. although like mostly part-time, like I said, mostly as a hobby. But it did take me a long time. And yeah, definitely one of the most common questions I get asked is how did you stay motivated through all that time? And I think because I mentioned I kind of did it on my own terms, that really helped. And also I kind of set my own schedule, which also really helped. And not having the weight of other people's expectations also really helped.
Mm.
I find that when I'm working on contract work, it is more stressful, and I find myself feeling more like Bernie outy because it's somebody else. I'm working to someone else's schedule, and I don't want to let them down. I don't want to be a bottleneck. Um, but on a self-directed project, I really didn't feel Bernie outy until maybe a month or so before launch, when it's just it's going to be stressful anyway because you're going to launch this thing that you took forever on, and you just never know how that's going to like come out
Yep.
really. But I will say, when it comes to recharging the batteries, um, I need to like disconnect the brain. I think is one of the most important ways of doing it. And I play soccer, which is really good for exercise, but it's also good because your brain is taken up with the immediacy of what you're doing at that time, and you can't really think about other stuff. So that focus on like this, physically doing something is really helpful. I mean, taking walks, of course, as well. Um, Also, just talking to friends that are in the industry, are not in the industry, like commiserating about stuff, I find very helpful. Um, that it's really big, especially if you're working. Like I said, I work from home. I work on my own a lot, so and I need to connect with other people. And I run the risk of just marinating in my own stuff, and
Mm.
that can be not that great. Um, and I've been trying to read more just fiction. That's is something that's just gonna, you just kind of turn your brain off, which can be difficult. Um, and I think it's really important. It's hard when you're doing it, but it's important to realize that if you're not feeling good, then you're not going to be that productive anyway. So just trying to force it out of yourself is not going to be the way. And also, the benefit of working for yourself and working on all the different parts of the game is, if I'm burnt out on one part of the game, like if I'm burnt out on art, I can do some writing or I can do some coding. I can just switch it up. And that's why I also think gray boxing the whole game and then just plugging art assets in for the last year of a game like wouldn't really work for me, because I like the idea where I can, if I'm sick of doing one thing, or I'm stuck in something, or I'm hit a wall in writing or whatever, I can move on to some other part of the game and putter away at that until whatever is happening subconsciously in our brains to help us problem solve something that we're not actively thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Once that's kind of hit where I need it to be, or I feel again like I want to revisit that, I can. And if I was going to do everything into its completion in every stage, then I wouldn't have that ability to just switch around like I did. And that also helped me to not be burnt out, because once I felt sick of something, I could, to something else.
I think all of that very good, very important. Especially, I feel like reading is one of the harder ones for
Yeah.
some reason, because like as a dyslexic, it's just kind of a hard task in general. But
Mm.
like that quietness of it in the world we live in is sometimes very hard to do, but it is very rewarding.
Yeah, and also when I do stream, I also stream playing games. And one of the reasons I do so that I'm literally just blocking out time to do that, because otherwise I don't give myself the time to play games. Because as someone who works for myself and on my own, I do tend to like work throughout the week. I work a bit on weekends as well. And so I don't give myself time. I don't schedule time to actually unplug a lot, which is bad, and I should get better at that, because I actually do enjoy what I do. And I'm really fortunate that I do enjoy what I do, which means for me, actually relaxing is actually getting a chance to actually do that instead of doing the administrative work associated with doing that, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because there's so much of that. And I feel frustrated sometimes when I actually can't do a lot of game dev, doing other stuff that's related to game dev, but not directly making the game. To me, like taking some of my weekend to actually get to work on the game is like a treat, and I still feel that way. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. But yeah, blocking time, but also with the reading thing, I find um, I like to recommend books, and I like to be recommended books. So what I've been doing with friends is I've been recommended a book, I'll read the book, and then as I get to different parts, I'll say, I'll mention, so it's nice to have a dialogue with somebody else. Was saying like someone who's read this book and say, oh, this is where I am, and this is, this part I'm reading. This is how I think about what I'm reading right now, about the characters and the situations that are happening. It's not really a book club, because book club can be like a whole other time commitment, but just an informal thing where you're like, okay, I read this section, and yeah, I know you like this book, and how did you feel about this section? Just having a bit of a discussion with somebody about the thing that you're engaging with can also motivate you to like keep doing it.
Agree. It's all really good. It's almost 6, so I'm gonna one more question before we go. Uh, now I'm also curious about book recommendations, but I want to say probably the closest video game to tabletop overlap is CRPGs, and you had mentioned
Yes.
CRPG is your second favorite genre after
Yes.
adventure games.
Mm-hmm.
What are your CRPG recommendations?
Oh yes. Okay, I do love Wizardry 7. Like, really good. I think if I had to recommend one role CRPG to people, would be Dark Sun, Shattered Lands.
Okay.
That's a really, really, really good. And I fact I've never finished it, but it almost feels like a desert dystopian Fallout, but before Fallout even.
Oh
It's a
wow.
beautiful, it's a really beautiful game. It's got a really flexible story. Like you can do different things, and you can have different outcomes, to different like quests and different stories that you do. I think it's a really fantastic game. That one I 100% recommend. What other CRPGs do I recommend? So yeah, Wizardry 7 for sure. Shattered Lands, Dark Sun, Shattered Lands. Um, I also what other ones I really spent. Wizardry 8 is also really good. I think I like those two a lot. Um, what other ones have I played that I really like? I should have been more prepared for this. I feel
No,
like.
I understand. Someone will ask me a thing, and then my brain
Like,
will
oh
be like,
gosh.
"You've never even heard that word before," and all associated information is gone.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand.
Yeah, Ultima is kind of a bit of a blind spot for me. I've played a little bit Ultima, a bit of Ultima 6, a bit of Ultima 7, but I can't say I've played enough to really recommend. Um, the reason why CRPGs, one of the reasons why it's my second favorite genre is because they take so darn long to play. Like an adventure game with a walkthrough, you can get through in like half an hour, top. But our CRPGs, my gosh, yeah, they'll take a little while. Man, oh man. I do recommend though, yeah, Dark Sun: Wake of the Ravager. I mean, sorry,
Okay.
Dark Sun: Shattered Lands, and there's a sequel, Wake of the Ravager. I never got to it really, but do recommend do recommend that game, and Wizardry 7, which is a classic. That's one I really love, and I did finish that one. I think that might be the only CRPG that I actually ever finished.
Oh wow. All right, I'll have to look up
It's
both of those. All right, bonus question. You said book recommendations, so now I have to ask to encourage everybody to read.
yes.
What's a book recommendation?
Oh sure. I really like something that came out like relatively recently. Is I like the Three Body Problem. I don't know if you
Yeah,
That one's really good.
it's really
And
good.
it's really good. I never saw the show or anything like that. I read the 3 books. One of the reasons I really love it is because it's translated, and culturally it feels so different from American sci-fi,
Mm,
which I do love. I love American sci-fi, but it does feel extremely different in terms of how they approach characters
yeah.
and story, and it just feels really cool to get to just feel differently when you're reading sci-fi. So that one, for 100% for sure, I really really enjoy that. I also really like. I'm trying to think of other ones. I like. You know what? What's it called? Is it Ringworld? Ringworld is the. I get Ringworld and Rimworld confused all the time. Ringworld is a computer game. Ringworld is the Larry Niven, right? I think
Baby?
so. Ringworld, I like at least the first few of those. I really like. They're kind of like more 70s, 80ish sci-fi novels. I really like those ones. David Brin has this Uplift series, and I really like the second book, which is Startide Rising. Did you read? Oh, you're laughing. You read?
I played an RPG with a
Ah,
friend, and I was a sci-fi setting, and she was like,
mm,
"Oh, can I play a dolphin that's been that
yes,
like has a I was like, "Sure, why not?" And she was explaining it and was like, "Oh, it's from this book series." And then she sent me the first
yes,
book.
yes, 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 yes. Oh my God, Yeah, because there's a first one. So that's it's there's two series of 3 books each. First series, second book, Dark Tide Rising is the best one. I've read I've read the first 3 books. Then the second book, I mean, you don't have to read them all to like understand what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
but it's great. It's like this dolphin slash human crew of a spaceship, and the spaceship has got like dolphin environments. There's parts of it that are like got water in them and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
it's completely played straight and it's great. It's so, and the writing is good. It's actually really good writing too. That's another thing that I like. I want to touch upon real quick, and I don't know how you feel about it, but sometimes I feel like an author is really good at world building. They might be not as good about like story and character.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever
Yeah.
get those?
Yep.
But it's magical when both of those things are working.
Yeah. All right. It's really funny to hear someone else talk about Uplift. So
It's
thanks.
so much fun. It's so much fun. I definitely recommend Dark Tide Rise.
Also, Incarnadine gifting a sub to you earlier. Thank you very
Oh,
much, Incarnadine.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that'll wrap it up for us. Was there anything else you wanted to pitch or say before we go?
Let me look at my notes here. I think I think I covered it all. But yeah, I mean, if you guys are on the Twitch, I do stream on Twitch at 8 p.m. Eastern, Crimson Tuesdays. I'm A_Maple Mystery. I'm doing game art for my latest little game. It's called The Deadly Bluff, which is a working title.
Ooh,
Um, it's a mini maple mystery. It's based on my trip to Nova Scotia for zeolite crystals. And so check that out there. Also, the Crimson Diamond currently, I think, on sale for the Steam Spring Sale potentially.
nice.
If you've not played the game, it's a good time to pick it up. It just recently hit 600 reviews on Steam. It's overwhelmingly positive, so maybe you'll like it. If you don't, I'm very, very sorry, and you can just refund it, and I won't hold it against you. Because it's a text parser game. I get it. It's ridiculous to even ask people to do this at this point, but maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll like a text parser game.
Cool.
And yeah, I think that's it. Jesse, this has been super fun.
Thank you. It has been fun. You were delightful to talk to. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank you everybody for being here. We'll see you next time. Bye everybody.